Welcome to CLIC Connect. I'm your host, Craig. Hey, it's season 10. You know, this has been a great season for producer Danny and I. We've had some great guests all year. It's just been wonderful. Now, before we do anything else, I do want to thank our good friends at Red Roof Franchising. Give Matt Hostetler a call. Let him know that producer Danny and I sent you. They'd love to hear from you. And they're also a founding sponsor of the 8th Annual California Lodging Investment Conference, which is coming up very soon as well. You can join us at the Westin in Long Beach by registering at CLIconference.com. So thank you very much for that. And now, with no further ado, we've got a newly appointed, or is it anointed, president of Brokerage, my friend, Eric Paulsen. Again, president of Brokerage at Kidder Mathews. Here he is. How are you, buddy?
Perfect. I'm doing great. How about yourself? I will not go with anointed. There's just too many jokes we could use with that, and the title is not Chief Shaman. So yeah, we'll go with voluntold, and we'll figure out from there.
Before we dive into everything, tell us about this. Now, are you president of Brokerage for the Americas or the Western U.S.? You know,
Sure.
Your duties have expanded. That's for sure.
They have expanded. So I am responsible for about 520 brokers, another 60 or so appraisers, some property management. So I know people like to say, "Oh, brokers, you're herding cats," but I think that's one dimensional. Yeah. I like to say putting frogs in wheelbarrows because that's more 3 and 4 and 5 dimensional, and it just shows a little bit more of what I've got going on. But I've got 19 offices in 6 different states along the West Coast. So I'm not sure it was so much as a promotion or a punishment, but I'm enjoying it. I love the people I'm working with. So it's so far so good.
And, you know, you've got a great crew over there. I've been interacting with a couple of them.
Yeah.
And very nice, very knowledgeable. And they're out there pounding the pavement. And that's what you need to do right now with everything that's going on. Now you're covering all the food groups. You've got, you know, one of your people's got a couple of hotel deals they're working on. You've got multifamily, you've got light industrial, you've got retail, automotive, I'm guessing, C-stores with and without car washes, and a few other things. You're covering everything, correct?
Assisted living, self-storage, pet cemetery condos. We've got it all covered. So not just the 4 basic food groups, but we've got single tenant net lease, nationwide, all kinds of stuff. So yeah. If you have a commercial real estate need, I've got someone who can help you either sell it, lease it, put debt on it, and or I've got somebody who can manage it or appraise it for you. So
nice.
Full service commercial real estate services firm.
Well, we're going to have to get you in touch with John Sturgis because he owns a Doggo Pet Hotels. So
perfect.
Yeah.
We can help him out. Absolutely. I'm not sure if that's retail or hospitality, but I've got 2 people I can put together to make sure that we get that covered for him.
I think it's a nice hybrid, actually. So
we'll work with them.
So, you know, Eric, we've been having this conversation for a long time, and it just keeps changing direction.
Yeah.
You know, office buildings. You know, you got a lot of property assets out there that are not functional as a Class A office. You've got city, county, states all screaming about housing. You and I, at one point in time, worked for one of the largest home builders in the nation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're building houses or just land banking right now. But, you know, converting these offices, and you and I had a discussion. There's a group out of New York, and the state of New York has also enacted some legislation last year. They're investing $1 billion in converting office buildings to multifamily and various other things. So I wanted to get your opinions on, you know, on this conversion seems thing. I don't want to say it's
concept, issue, item, policy.
Yeah. I'm not sure what to classify it. It's kind of like AI. It's, you know, it's there. Yeah, but it's not there. Okay.
Right. Well, I think if you're going to have to take it to a specific location and look at the various markets. So New York, San Francisco, downtown Los Angeles, those are all CBDs, highly densified, and have had their issues with COVID and the return to work versus the work from home. I like to pick on Los Angeles because it's the closest one to me. I do have an office down there. The vacancy factor in Los Angeles office is 25%. So that means 1 out of every 4 square feet up there is vacant. Yeah. So who is going to those markets? And so if I own that building, I've got to look at several alternatives. One, we've talked about this, the cost of retrofitting or converting to residential is expensive. Yeah. So let's compare the cost of conversion versus the cost of sitting on it with no tenant paying revenue and doing the tenant improvements or doing some amenities, whatever it takes to do that. So it's one of those options. So you're trying to figure out as the owner, which direction do I go? How long can I afford to sit vacant versus do I bite the bullet and do some transformative use on there? And residential isn't the only option. There are other options you can do. Hotel, which we've talked about. Obviously, you specialize in that, and you'd be the expert to opine on hotel. In addition to residential, you've talked about how IT could utilize that with databases or with server rooms or anything along those lines. But it's got so much vacancy that you have to do something. And so the other option is, do I sell my building to a user? And you're seeing some downtown Los Angeles buildings, the big high rises. UCLA just bought a downtown high-rise building that they'll either use for administrative or campus resource at a very nice price. Yeah. So San Diego just had the same concept where Irvine Company sold to, and they don't sell, to somebody else, a high-rise building that was 70% occupied and the balance of it was already built out spec. They turned around and walked away from it. So owners are in the position of deciding, what does my go forward look like? Yeah. And they're running the numbers and trying to come up with the best course of action. And if it's spend a lot of money to convert so that they can hold on to their asset or have something that will monetize it better, it's an option. It's just expensive. And so when do we return to work and I'm now full as an office building? Or when do I say, you know what, I quit. I need to do something else with this. Let's look at some other options.
Now, and I think those are all viable. I don't think anybody really wants a server farm in a building anymore via the old downtown LA, about the time LA Live was really, getting built out. Doesn't provide any revenue, really, no taxes.
Doesn't help the local retail, doesn't help anybody because you don't have bodies there, right?
And I mean, you got a security guard, and that's about it. And it's
no parking, so you're not getting parking fees. Yep.
Yeah, no parking, and it's a huge drain on the grid.
But it's net income, it's revenue, and so you're looking at, again, some of those offsets. So it becomes 4 or 5 different scenarios that you can work with, and you're looking at a longer horizon than you probably thought to lease up the space.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. Yeah, any type of conversion, whether it be a hotel or hotel, multifamily, retail into an office building, it's sewage, it's water, it's electricity, it's air and heating. All those things are expensive. Now, are the cities or counties at the point now where they may be offering some tax incentives to go down that path? Because they're also under a state mandate on housing.
Right. It's funny. I think the cities are in a rock and a hard place because they've got their constituents saying, we don't want any more. And then they've got the state saying, thou shalt take more. And when you think about it, residential is usually more of an expense to a city than it is a revenue. They're getting their property taxes and things of that nature. But with more people, I need to have more schools, more police, more fire, more all of that. So they're kind of conflicted. So until they get incentivized to build residential and offset some of their costs for that, they're really not that incentivized. And you're hearing stories of the city saying, yes, developer, you want to build 200 units on this site, but that's too much. We're going to allow you to build 100. And the developer goes and points to state law and says, I'm putting in 500 to you, and now you're stuck with 500 instead of the 200 I wanted before. So you're seeing state level versus local level. You're not seeing yet enough incentives to justify the city trying to force that through. Yeah. And so I think you're just seeing a tale of where is it, how much is it going to cost, how long is it going to take me to get through the process? Do I have natural rights just to go around the entitlement and planning process? And I think it's still just a little too early and it's still a little confusing for somebody to say, oh yeah, let's go do that on a consistent basis.
I agree. And, you look at the live, work, play component over at Anaheim Stadium. That's certainly not appealing to me. That's not what I want.
Yeah, no, I want my yard. And
yeah. Well, I don't want a yard. I'm done. I'm done. That's why I live at the beach. But even in my 20s, that wouldn't have been something that I wanted. You do have limited food and beverage within walking distance. I don't know if there's a grocery store close by to any of that. And that was the big rub in downtown LA. They had all the condos and apartments, and there wasn't a grocery store for 15 minutes. So,
well, at one point, remember, Craig, when we were at L&R Lennar, we had the site at 11th and Fig tied up right across from Staples Center.
Yep.
It was land, and we were going to build a Ralph's on the bottom floor.
Yep.
We're going to do apartments above that, and it's really tough. You mentioned the sewage, the utilities, and all that fun stuff, but it's also the columns and the bay depths. Retail does not line up very well with residential. You don't necessarily want all these posts in the middle of that. But when you go to a New York, 20-year-olds want to go to New York. They are okay living in that challenging environment where they go to the local deli down the street to get a milk or something like that. I got a kid about to move to New York. Why? Because that's the great age to do it. Would I do it to raise my family? No. So I'm right there with you now. But as these 20-year-olds or 20-pluses, that's the exciting new kind of thing to do. But they've got to feel like they've got a job. They got to feel like they're safe. They got to feel like it's a good environment. It'll be something positive. And a lot of our other downtowns don't have that same environment or cachet. So I don't see them wanting to.
Yeah. Part of San Diego, part of Los Angeles are vertical markets. Orange County isn't. We've got that behemoth, twin towers off the 55 freeway that started out as condos and ended up apartments.
Right. Where the original developer lost money.
Yeah.
The person who came in and did it. So again, that kind of also points to when you follow the money, do I go do this and then lose it because I can't profit off it? And the second guy comes in and takes advantage of my dead body to be able to go do and make money on it. So that's where the incentives have to come in, is to allow me to even think about kickstarting off and getting started without having to worry about losing it at the end to someone else who gets to profit off all my hard work.
And, we've seen that repeatedly. Another classic example of that is the Ritz-Carlton down south from us that, was the third one in that made money.
Right.
He got cents on the dollar.
Yeah. That's the cycle, winning and losing and timing with the economics, micro and macro. But that is part of the risk. And so you're seeing these buildings in downtown LA again that at one point were bought for $300 and $400 and $500 a foot, now trading for $84 to $125. So somebody has lost, and this new group is now going to be able to take advantage of what's in place now at a lower basis. And then that'll have a domino effect for the neighborhood. But with that lower basis, they can now make different economic decisions.
Yeah. Is it a longer hold? Different. Yeah, you're right. Now, you and I have both been hearing the same song and dance for, 18 months, 24 months now about there's, lots of money on the sidelines. Now, are we going to start seeing more investments into California from Arizona and various other states where these people need to deploy money at this point? Or are they going to stay out of California because they just don't want to go through the trials and tribulations here?
Yeah. So I'm going to say reverse what you'd explained as where the money is going. Is there a lot of money ready for real estate? Absolutely. There's never been more money on the debt side, the equity side, private, institutional, whatever you want, funds. There's never been more money available for real estate, and there's pressure to build on it. So it's a supply demand. Yeah. With that amount of supply and limited demand, you would think the prices would go up, but you're getting some artificial limitations on that with the interest rates where they are, with the ULA tax that's in place in Los Angeles, with some legislation basically saying we are going to limit your ability to maximize the value of your real estate. With the fires that have just taken place, there's been a lot of regulations and multiple lawsuits suing for gouging or for raising prices. That's a supply demand problem. And so they're basically saying, if you go to rebuild, I'm not going to let you build a single family home. I might let you I'm going to make you build, 2 or 3 units on your old site. That's not in place. That's a rumor, probably a bad rumor, and probably misinformation, but you could see something like that happening. So I see where money is following the yield. You invested in California for appreciation. You
Right.
bought it at a 3 cap. Hopefully you're going to get to a 6 cap within 5 years in value and return, because this is a market that's strong. It grows, it appreciates. You invested someplace else at that 6 cap already, knowing it was going to stay at 6 cap. So you were just buying it for the income stream. Now, what I think you're seeing is people are disillusioned enough where they're buying out of state just for the income, maybe some appreciation outside. And I think the differential between now and 50 years ago is, if I bought and named Podunkia, Oklahoma, Nebraska, South Dakota, there were no other buyers for that. I was going to own it forever because there's nobody to take me out 10 years from now. Nowadays, with internet information availability, buyers are more willing to go to these tertiary markets. So you actually do have a market being created with an exit strategy. So it's easier to go invest at a good, higher return, knowing that if you do need to exit, there is actually somebody out there to get you out of it. And that would be the differential from California. Owning here, appreciation may happen, but it also could be capped by all this legislation coming in, all the laws and regulations and reporting and this kind of stuff, that I think you're seeing more money selling here to go there.
Interesting. Well, you got caught in the middle of a lot of these legislative battles with the, with NAIOP. What are you seeing there? I mean, there's got to be, I don't know, a dozen different items that you're rolling your eyes on, going, really?
Yeah. And that would be the case. So for the audience, I'm the past president of NAIOP SoCal, which is a 1,300 member organization that does a lot with the legislative affairs, keeps on top of. We go back we go up to Sacramento, we go back to Washington, D.C., try and keep our legislators up to speed on what's going on with the new rules coming out. We're stakeholders. What does it mean for us? And I was listening to a gentleman the other day who I think is fantastic. He's a political consultant. He says, to understand this, you have to understand your electorate in California. Your electorate in California has changed completely. Whereas it was used to be dominated by Republican, it used to be dominated by male. It's now gig majority Democratic. And actually, if you look at our Senate, things of that nature, it's now more weighted to women than it is to men. So if you look at the ethnicity, it's I believe, and don't quote me on this, but it was 40% Latino, 30% Asian, 20% African American, 10% white. Well, that's a huge demographic change. And then if you look at it, it's more women than men. Okay, so if you have to understand where they're coming from, some of this legislation that you're seeing is from first-generation Americans. One, the SB 1103, I believe, is first-generation Guatemalan who's put the bill in place to protect what she knows and understands is her community and her voter electorate is the English as a second language, small businesses, micro enterprises, and how does she protect them? And it impacts all of California, not just her constituents. So understanding where things are coming in, there's been two that started in January, AB 98, SB 1103. There's a couple of others that really impact corporate owners of real estate, which is who they're targeting, private owners of real estate, where you now have to do a lot more reporting, recording, climate concerns, et cetera, et cetera. So legislation in California seems to be pushing the envelope towards crazy instead of, and I'll say towards crazy is a little harsh. Let's just say anti-business or not pro-business, where they're really trying to protect tenants, which is counterintuitive to capitalistic approach and a business as an employer, a provider of taxes, sales, and revenue and property tax. So it just feels like they're anti-business and kind of pushing business out of the state.
Yeah, and we, we've had some major companies leave. We've also had a lot of tech, AI in particular, coming back in or starting up in San Francisco, taking advantage of spaces that they were able to rent at a reasonable rate.
Yep. So if I can interrupt real quick, so the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation or company, whatever they're called, did a great report, and they called it the brain drain or the brain gain. Right. So companies come here because we're intelligent. We got great venture capital interest. We've got great universities to provide highly qualified and intelligent people. So smaller companies come in, they want to capitalize on so they can grow. Once they get to a big enough size, they're established, Then they move, taking their 1,200 employees out of the country for regulatory rules and it's a cheaper cost of living. So the LA EDC and I believe Bank of America Merrill Lynch did that study. It might be a couple of years old by now, but I thought that was fascinating. What you're seeing with San Francisco with the AI is, yes, that is coming in and taking place there. That's taking advantage of the venture capital stuff. That's one market. Will it benefit any of the other markets throughout California? Not sure yet. I think it was just announced that even smaller businesses are moving out of where they were originally headquartered or heading back to their bases. But you are seeing a population decrease. We did lose the number of politicians because it's based on our census.
Right.
And as you saw the other day, they're actually countering census saying, are you counting illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants, whatever you want to, don't get me political on it. Right. Are you counting those in their census? Yes, you are. Will we start seeing you can't do that anymore? And that, I think, will impact the Arizonans, the Texans, the Californians, because they are counted in that population. So we're seeing more of our legislators focusing on that population, and we're seeing more of that population potentially not being counted towards the census. I think we're going to see a lot of change in California, not necessarily pro-business over this year and next, with our current electorate and where things are headed.
I agree with you. I think things are changing. Okay.
Yeah. And while that sounded pessimistic, don't get me wrong. I still live in California. I still work in California. I still have 20 offices, most of which are in California. This is our home. This is our business. It just feels like we do a lot of shooting ourselves in the foot with just some kind of knee-jerk reaction. Well-intentioned, but these aren't the other math I forgot to say. 70% of our electorate has never held a private sector job. They've all signed the back of the check, not the front. So they don't necessarily understand. So our role is to educate and try and get them there so they understand why their policies are going to impact the people they're trying to protect.
And that's why NAIOP, AHNLA, CHNLA, and various other trade organizations are so important, and why you have to have that collaborative nature between all of us. We've got a hospitality legislative day every year up in Sacramento, and we meet with all the representatives or their chiefs of staff. So
I wrote an article, and I apologize for interrupting. I'm really good at that. That I said apathy is costing the commercial real estate industry billions. A lot of this legislation is getting in place because we are not as organized as the other groups that are pushing for that. So I know CBPA, NAIOPS, and all the other groups that you've mentioned. It's fascinating how our electorates make their decisions. If they don't know something, they go to their straw polls. So I sat in a congressman's office, and the receptionist was going over their voicemails and talking to another person who was keeping tally. Yes, no, 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 yes. And at the end of it, they turned around and said, okay, we had 200 no's and 15 yeses. We should vote no on this.
Yes.
And we don't do those call-ins. We don't call in and say, hey, this is Eric Paulsen. I'm calling from here. Please vote no on this. Count me as a no vote, as often as we should. And we've got plenty of people that can do that. Yeah. So it's really us not engaging enough to let our politicians and electorates know this is a good idea or a bad idea. And it's our apathy, and that sounds so stupid, that'll never happen. And it happens, and we go, wow, that was stupid. Well, it's kind of our fault for not getting engaged.
Yeah, no, it always is. And, you and I have had the benefit of history. And
we're old. Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate you phrasing it that way.
But we've seen this overreaction more than 2 or 3 times. Yeah. And it is that pendulum. And it's not about trying to do the right thing for everybody, which trying to appease or make everybody happy, you're gonna make nobody happy. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
That's
where the 200 no's come in and the 50 yeses come in.
Yeah.
And that's where we talked about this before. 200 renters, 1 owner.
Yeah.
Rent control, 200 votes.
Yeah.
So here's my tinfoil, and I do wear a tinfoil hat every now and then just to protect myself from government intrusion, of course. But a lot of our jobs that we have, so picture Carl's Jr.'s, McDonald's, and name that fast food, political jobs, those were supposed to be part-time. They were supposed to be right out of college. It was your first job. You learned how to get a job. It wasn't necessarily Uber drivers. You were supposed to be just a participating. You were an independent contractor for some side hustle money. All of those have now become careers.
Right.
And as a career, now you have to have a living wage and you have to have a lot more involved in it now, and potential pension funds. So you've got people that are in this position who are looking at it as a career, not as a stopgap. And that's where I think it runs into some problems is when it's a career, I now have to keep my job. And that means every 2, 4, 6 years, I have to get reelected to keep my job. I'm now going for votes, not necessarily for right or wrong. And I can go where the wind blows. I can go where it takes me. But my job is to get reelected. And I think that's part of where the problem is we've turned it into a career, which is not necessarily positive for us as the citizens.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, that whole career politician thing, my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got to disclaim everything with allegedly.
Yeah.
This is allegedly my opinion.
Got started in the 70s.
Yeah.
And, at one point in time, going into politics was a second career. Okay. You had someone like a John McCain, who I had the utmost respect for when he was living. Didn't agree with everything that he said or did, but, I felt he was honest and he was doing the best job possible for his constituents and the country. He could have very easily gone into seclusion after coming back from Vietnam. Stayed in the military, became a liaison between the Senate and the DOD, then decided to run for the Senate and, held his job there for a long time. John Glenn was another one. You had certain people that they still had that calling to serve and went into politics. It wasn't till I think the 70s sometime where people got the idea, well, wait a minute. I can go there, vote no, yes, abstain, and make a ton of money and just keep getting reelected.
Right.
It's the quality of people that we put into office, and it's our fault. So, it's kind of like, what are we going to do? I don't know, but let's move on.
Heck of a rabbit hole. We can keep down that one forever.
Let's talk about capital, debt, and equity, my friend. What are you seeing out there?
There's a lot of it. A lot of money was raised for distress, and none of it got placed. You have to really look at the regulations and rules on all of these lenders and owners. Is there a hope certificate where I can last another year and not have to feed the piece of property? I'm going to do it. There's not been anything that said mark to market. There's not been anything that said you have to act right now. So people have been kicking the can down the road. Depends on your lender.
Yeah.
You have a special servicer. You have a CMBS loan that's been securitized. They're more willing to look at it not as personally, a little less emotionally, and turn around and say, is there equity in it? We're foreclosing. No equity in it. Let's see if we can restructure or do something with it. Doesn't hit their balance sheets, and they get paid to look at it. A bank that's made a loan, that'll hit their balance sheets. So they're doing everything they can to try and make sure that this loan stays off the books or off the bad books. So they will do what they can to try and extend things. So nobody's really had to be forced to make decisions. So all of this distressed money sitting on the sidelines has been waiting for it, and it's not happening. So it's not getting placed, and it's either getting returned to the investors or getting recataloged. So still a lot of money out there. They're not seeing the distress they want. There's still some isolated pockets. I do believe that you saw where BlackRock was able to buy a loan portfolio. You'll start seeing some winnowing of that. But that was like $1 billion. You and I don't necessarily play in that arena anymore. So it's not going to impact us. But the distress, while it's happening and there's something going on, it's really not hitting the streets where people can take advantage of it or do it. So a lot of capital that's sitting along the sidelines not being placed.
Yeah. The regular or the normal suspects for multifamily, are they just kind of pausing everything right now, waiting to see, if if they haven't put a shovel in the dirt, are they just kind of sitting on that right now, waiting to see which way the tide's going to flow?
Well, everything's about the money. So at the end of the day, will it be profitable if I build this or not? I think depending upon where you are, multifamily is always a decent product to build because there's a lot of residential that needs to be built. We're undersupplied in residential. And this up-and-coming generation would more like to rent than necessarily to own. So you've got a lot of population to do that. So I'd say, yeah, if it makes sense, you're going to do it. The problem is the cost of construction these days is very high. The ability to go get a construction loan is not as easy as it's been in the past. It is possible. It's just whether or not it's feasible. So you're looking at rents at a certain number and saying, okay, can I build to that? And it makes sense for me to not have to give it back to the bank and let that second guy win, right? That we were talking about earlier. So for the most part, because of the costs right now, it has not made a ton of sense to build. Arizona is overbuilt right now and is now recovering from an overbuilt market because it just seemed to be the place to go. If I'm going to build in Los Angeles and they're going to say I'm going to cap your rents, I now have to take that into consideration. Is there money to build? Is there the cost in place? Is my timing of entitlements to get through this process going to be 18 months or can it be shorter? And right now, there's certain things that are on backlog. So if I want to do electricity with transformers and panels and all that, that could be 12 to 18 months before it even gets delivered. Yeah. So my timeline's been extended. My entitlement process is longer. The product's taking longer to get to me. So I think it's going to be on an individual basis, and it's really tough to make it make sense to build almost in any product type at this point.
I agree with you. I think that, and building materials and skilled labor.
Sure.
Think
about what that cost is going to be right now in the Pacific Palisades when you want to go build a house and there's another 10, 15,000 homes that want to get built. Are you getting the A contractor, the B, or the C? Are you getting the supplies for that? I think you're going to see a short-term pop in industrial rates up there as contractors move into town. I already got a call the other day from a contractor in Texas saying, hey, if you know work out there, we're willing to fly in and do it. Everybody sees this as a potential opportunity. Retail's been impacted. There were 1,800 businesses impacted, lots of homes impacted. It's still technically toxic up there, and they're not letting people come in until they clean that up. So you're looking at a large population of people that are going to have to do something. That's going to benefit everybody around as it fills up the apartment buildings. Does it now make sense? Sure, based on what's happening today, but maybe not necessarily as what happened pre the fire. But I would say, given all of that, there's going to be a lot of growth in the Los Angeles area that people can monetize and capitalize on without the gouging. I know it sounds Machiavellian or painful, but yeah, there is a lot of pain and suffering, but there's going to be a lot of rebuilding, which represents opportunity for those that can help people rebuild and get back into their homes and their businesses again.
Absolutely. And if you look at it, we just came up on a year and a half of the Lahaina fire. All of the debris and toxicity in the residential area is gone.
Right.
Just about all of the debris and toxic materials in the commercial area is gone. The mayor of Maui County has lifted some of the restrictions on the property that's on the mountain side of Lahaina. But the short...
and you can look to Paradise. Paradise was less than 5 years ago. They are technically back open for business, but they had 40,000 residents. I believe they're now at 20,000. So you still have half the population that said, okay, I'm going to go try something different.
Yeah.
Pacific Palisades, I think, is a desirable enough location where it will backfill back to full. It's just how long is it going to take us to get there?
Yeah, it's going to be a decade or two.
We shall see. Because, again, they talked about streamlining the entitlement process.
Yeah.
So I've got a brother-in-law that built a house in Texas. His contractor came back upset in the afternoon and said, I didn't get my permit today. I'm kind of pissed. They made me come back tomorrow. Our governor came out and said, we've shrunk the entitlement process down to 4 months. Well, okay. We can do better.
Yeah.
I think we can do better.
I think we can too. I'm telling you.
Right. Now let's talk about the other elephant in the room, and that would be insurance for all of this.
Yeah, you read my mind. That's exactly where I was going.
Yeah, not pre-planned, folks, but that is something where to build, to regrow again, to do anything, insurance right now is going to be exceptionally difficult. It was already getting raised. I think part of that is due to our legislation that makes it difficult for them to do their annuities or whatever. I forget what they call that one, but to be able to underwrite their actuarials to appropriate levels to be willing to finance us here. I've talked to plenty of people who are really upset seeing Jake from State Farm on TV when Jake from State Farm won't give them a policy. So get them off my TV or give me a policy. But getting insurance costs have gone up 40%, 30, 40, and sometimes 100% based on what you had before. They're looking for reasons to cancel you. It's tough to get insurance. So I think that is another item where we need to get our hands around it. Instead of saying, hey, let's push up entitlements as well, let's also look at making it easier for our major carriers to be able to insure in these states. Otherwise, I can't build anyways, or I can't afford it. So I think that's another one that's happening. We have at NAIOP coming up, I believe, later this month, a panel of insurers, et cetera, talking about how we're going to be able to do that. So I'll know more later from the experts. But I do think that's something we're also going to have to look at versus just entitlements is how are we going to get insurance costs down? How are we going to – it's supply demand. Remember, if you've kicked out 5 insurers who will redline the state, well, that's 5 less. So now the supply is lower, demand is high, costs go up. So let's get more insurers able to insure in our market and make it hopefully more competitive an environment, bringing our prices down.
Love it. Love it. Okay, my friend, are you ready for our 2-minute lightning round?
Oh, I'm actually nervous, but go ahead.
All right. Producer Danny's going to put 2 minutes on the clock starting now. Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay. Grocery store demolition derby.
Yeah. Super Bowl, I watched half of it.
Okay.
And I didn't see the halftime report. My kids thought I'd hate it. But yes, I watched it. Big moneymaker.
Interest rates.
Flat and not coming down fast enough. We will not see any Fed rate cuts at the level we want to make it more desirable. Rate cuts went down, rates went up. Doesn't make sense.
Backgammon or chess?
Backgammon. Easier to find people that are willing to play that one versus chess.
Social media.
Destructive technology for our kids. They're taking cell phones away from school now because of it. Too interactive in their lives, too influential, too prevalent, too fast, too mind-blowing. Check me out on LinkedIn.
Pickleball.
Which one? Pickleball or what?
Tennis.
Pickleball, because I'm suffering from pickleball elbow as we speak. And it's much more social, easier to play, more popular, just louder.
There you go. What is a Newport Chevy?
Ooh. I don't know. I've lived here my whole life. What is it? What's my guess? A Newport Chevy would probably be a white Tesla.
Nope. Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, I drive one. I should have guessed that one. Worst driver, a white Tesla. Give me that one.
Favorite restaurant in Newport Beach?
Ooh, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't say Newport Ribco, even though it's in Costa Mesa. I'm going to probably get in trouble if I say others, but I go a lot to El Ranchito and Corona del Mar. I go a lot to Buddha's Favorite. I go a lot to, it's tough to get into Gulfstream, so I know they're doing well, so I don't get to go there that much. But Newport Ribco, Gulfstream, Buddha's Favorite, and who else will allow me to plug it? Oh, the place. Classic Q. I go to Classic Q for lunch.
Q's, yeah. Oh, wow.
And Andre's for social.
Get the broker place. Come on.
Of course.
Tons of brokers. So,
yeah,
good time.
Way to get me in trouble with all my friends that own restaurants. Summer Street is perfect. Thank you.
You did that more than 2 minutes, but that's okay. Eric, this has always been a pleasure having you on the show. Great information. Yeah. You're always welcome to come back anytime. I'd also like you to write an article for the CLIC blog if you have time.
Sure.
Talking about the commercial market.
Yeah, happy to.
Make it as long or as short as you want. Contact information and and logo and photo, and we'll push it out there, not only on the blog, but on LinkedIn as well.
Happy to do that, and happy to be actually to anybody that watches this, both of you, or 10,000 of you, however it is. Sorry, I can't help myself. I'm happy to be a resource. If anybody wants to reach out to me and just say, hey, I've got a really strong research department that can get answers that are actually data analytical, I'm happy to opine on things. So I'm more than happy to take phone calls or emails, and if anybody has any questions about things, I'll at least point you in the right direction if I don't have the answer. So happy to be as a resource for you, Craig. I'm happy to also make that available to your audience.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And if you want to know about grocery store demolition derby and why Eric Paulsen and I are not allowed in pavilions anymore.
Now I get the reference. You got to pay more attention, Craig, to which aisle you're walking down. You're going to get hit.
Thank you, my friend. We'll see you.
My pleasure. Great to see you too.
What a great show. Eric's a great guest. He's one of the true real estate professionals. That's why he's the president over at Kidder Mathews on the brokerage side. He's just great. Hey, you know what? It's time to thank our good friends at Red Roof Franchising for being our production partner and our sponsor for CLIC 8. Give Matt Hostetler a call. He'd love to hear from you. Tell him that producer Danny and I sent you. They're doing some really nice stuff. They've got 2 assets up in California that were closed down, completely rebuilt, as one is a red roof and the other one as their extended stay, and beautiful properties. So give them a call. They'd love to hear from you. And then also coming up on March 5th and 6th, we've got the 8th annual California Lodging Investment Conference. We're at the Westin in Long Beach this year. Join us there. You can register at CLIconference.com. You can meet, greet our sponsors at our welcome reception on the 5th. Also, our Hotel Development Deals of the Year Award will be on the 5th. I don't know, maybe Eric Paulsen's coming. I know it's around his birthday. I'll have to check with him off camera. And then we've got some great new panels for you as well. So join us for that. As I'm fond of saying, be kind, share your knowledge, go be amazing.